Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news hour, we'll be discussing the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. In page 1, there is no news related to economy. In the editorial page, we have an article. Every once in a while, there will be revision in the GDP estimates. And currently, the NSO has revised the GDP estimates to a lower level because of the current happenings in the world economy. And in the previous news hours, we have discussed that the rural consumption is on low and the retail inflation is picking up because of the crude oil prices in the global market. And even the previous month's core sector's output is not very high. The purchasing managers index shows that there are manufacturing job losses in the February month, and the external risk factors because of the Russian and Ukraine conflict are increasing the oil prices. We also discussed about the federal banks move to tighten the liquidity and the bond yields fluctuating. So all these have impact on the economy. Because of all these factors, the NSO has revised the estimates for the Indian GDP. And the editorial also says that the government should now make preparations to fight the inflation that we are importing because of the increased crude oil prices. And there should be greater policy support. And beyond offering the credit guarantees, we should still give support to those sectors which are not yet come out of the COVID pandemic's impact. That's about this editorial. In the business page, there is a news that the trade deficit widens. India's merchandise exports, that is the merchandise is just related to the goods. India's merchandise exports rose by 22%. At the same time, the imports grew by 35%, because of which we have a deficit. Deficit is when our imports are more than the exports. And the February's deficit, it was twice more than the pre-pandemic level of what we had in 2022. And the deficit is mainly because of certain goods, and those are fertilizers, which almost increased by sevenfold, and the coal imports, which almost doubled, and also the increase in the gold imports. And an increase in the oil prices will also have an impact on the current account deficit, and it would lead to increase in the current account deficit. We have already discussed about impact of the Russian banks going out of the SWIFT payment settlement system because of the sanctions imposed by the European Union, and the impact it would have on the payment settlement, because of which we will have a delay in payments from Russia. Because the Russian banks are now out of the SWIFT payment settlement system, the Indian exporters who are exporting for the Russia, their payments would be delayed until we find an alternative for settling the payments. And the crude oil prices, the West Texas Intermediate crude futures, they have been increasing because of the conflict in Russia. Here we just need to understand the concepts and the main terms which would be asked in prelims, and we need not go into the numbers of the crude because daily it would be fluctuating and it would be increasing for some time until this conflict reduces. So you just need to focus on the concepts more than the numbers. The February's purchasing managers index shows an uptick in the output and orders. We need not go into the details again. Here we just need to glance through and see that favorable demand conditions are picking up, because of which the production has increased. And again, the headlines is more important. Aggregate saw an increase of 6,600 crore funding in the last 4 years. Here in this article, there are some crucial data. Two-thirds of India's population participated in the rural economy in the past 2 years, and the main participation was in its subsector, the agriculture, which contributes around 33%, 37% of the total rural GDP. So you can see the impact the agriculture has on the rural GDP. So if we want to increase the rural incomes, we'll have to focus on the agricultural reforms. And agriculture has been growing at an annual rate of 11% since 2015, and this agriculture sector is now being disrupted. Like we can see the lot of changes in the agriculture sector because of internet penetration, smartphones, drone technology, etc. Here again, you just need to read the headlines and need not go to the details. FMCG consumption slows in urban market. This shows that even the urban consumption demand is now getting affected because of the increasing inflation. If the prices of goods and services increases, people with the same level of income won't be able to afford what they were previously affording. So their consumption would obviously reduce. In the text and context page, we have an article about the Russian invasion and its impact on the global chip shortage. So how did this global chip shortage begin? After reaching the peak in 2011, the laptop market slowly slowed down, and because of the rise in the smartphones, the demand for laptops reduced. But then the pandemic came, work from home increased, children had to attend school through online classes, so the demand for laptops and smartphones increased. And even during the pandemic, as people were at homes, and because of the increase in the gaming industry, the console based gaming increased. All this has lots of demand from the chips. And even now, because of the increasing IoT, artificial intelligence, AI, which use chips in their manufacturing, and the automobiles and the smart cars which use chips in their manufacturing, the demand for chips increased. But during the pandemic, the production is mainly focused in few countries like South Korea and Taiwan, and the supply chains got disrupted, the manufacturing got disrupted, the supply reduced in the pandemic, but the demand kept increasing, because of which we had a shortage. And there are two types of chips. There are these large wafer chips which are very expensive and which are used in advanced equipment. And for the digital gadgets, we need small diameter wafers. The manufacturing is of which was reduced because the industry as a whole was moving towards the adaptation of 5G technology, which needs the manufacturing of the large wafer chips as compared to the small diameter chips which are used in the smart electronic items. So the orders for 5G was being met by the industry, and suddenly COVID came, and the sudden increase in order for the small electronic goods led to this chip shortage. And also adding to that, there was the logistical complexities, the supply chain disruptions all over the world because of the lockdowns, and the cost of containers of shipping increasing. All this added to the price of the chips being increasing. On one side there was less supply, on the other side there were cost pushing measures happening. So because of which the costs increased, the supply was right. So all this led to a global shortage of chips. And what is the impact of Russian invasion on the chip shortage? The article says that the shortage would be intensified because Ukraine currently supplies some gases which are used in the semiconductor fabrication, and Russia exports rare metals like palladium which are used in the manufacturing of this semiconductor. Here the article discusses about the uses of this rare metal called palladium. It is used as an alternative to gold in making various devices, and this particular metal, it is highly malleable and it is resistant to corrosion, and it is softer than gold, but at the same time it is much harder and much durable. That means it comes for a use for a longer period of time. On one hand it is softer, on the other hand it is much durable. It is also has the property of showing greater resistance to denting, because of which it is a preferred in the manufacturing of automobiles, electronic items, and the biomedical devices. And Russia and South Africa are two largest producers of palladium, and any impact on these countries would have a direct impact on the supply chain of the palladium. And Russia is also a leading producer in other platinum group metals. And this platinum is used in almost all electronic devices and in making chipsets and circuit boards. And sanctions on Russia would disrupt these exports from Russia, leading to fewer sources of raw materials. There are no other sources of raw material for this particular metal, and there are no current alternatives for it. So this would have a direct impact on the supply chains, on the cost of the semiconductors. At the same time, there is a growing demand for the semiconductor industry. The semiconductor industry is projected to grow by 8.8 percentage to almost a 601 US billion dollar industry. So you can see, on the one hand we have supply chain problems, the supply is reducing, production are not happening, and in Russia we have a crisis. On the other hand, the demand for it is increasing, on the other hand there is a shortage. So all this just adds up to the problem. And trends in technology like the electric mobility, automotive safety, IoT, Internet of Things would just add to the growing demand of the semiconductor industries. So currently, because of which the businesses, they know the US has realized that depending on the Southeast Asian countries for semiconductor industry is not good in the long run. So they are going for reshoring. What is reshoring? It is exactly opposite of offshoring. Offshoring is when a country sets up its manufacturing plant in some other country where there is cheap labor and raw material. Reshoring is bringing back the manufacturing to your own country. And here in this case, because the countries doesn't want to depend on the international supply chain, which is getting disrupted because of various reasons, all the countries are going for reshoring, that is setting up the manufacturing plants in their own countries. And what are the benefits of reshoring? It is easier to control production and maintain quality and control when you are producing it in your own country. There would be fewer government restrictions. When you are importing from some other country, the government would put more restrictions. But if you are producing in your own country, the restrictions would be less. And it will also benefit the local community because it would provide more jobs to the local people. So what are countries doing? India had recently announced a 76,000 crore scheme to incentivize those companies which are going to set up design and manufacturing of semiconductors within the country. This is a production linked scheme, and US government is also planning to pass the CHIPS Act, which would provide subsidies to the chip making in the US. So you can see how countries are giving subsidies and incentives to manufacturing firms to set up the plants in their own countries so that they would not depend on the other countries in future and get disrupted by the global supply chain problems. These are the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.